It's Columbus Day. There's been a lot of talk over the last 10 years that I know of where people are trying to figure out whether or not we should celebrate Columbus Day. A lot of people like to look at history, rewrite history, point history towards a goal or a point that they would like to make, and pull out certain facts or examples that are sitting in there to prove their point. And just like in my psychology class, I tell you guys, you can write one thing, somebody can take it and try to disprove it and come up with something that's very well written, very well researched, and go about that way, and then somebody else will come along and say, no, here's what I think, and back everything with facts and examples. So it makes for a good education, right? What we need to understand is that no matter how many times somebody wants to take a holiday like Columbus Day and start pointing out all the bad things about Christopher Columbus, about the conquistadors, about early colonization by Europeans, the fact that Columbus was not the first European to reach the Americas. By far, we can argue that Native Americans crossing the land bridge from Asia into what is now Alaska and Canada and coming down would be the first. We can argue that Leif Erikson showed up here 400 some odd years before Columbus, and there is evidence of Vikings. You can take a biblical stance and argue that the Israelites, some of the tribes that broke up, made their way all the way to the Americas. But what I would like to point out now, though, is that even though during his time, where there's controversy over the national holiday, the things of the number of deaths that Christopher Columbus caused in the world by bringing such things as disease, or the attitude he had towards the inhabitants for forced labor, or even the simple fact of taking over and dominating over a basic culture that many historians recently are arguing that a plague, for lack of a better term, swept through the Americas before Columbus even got here. Kind of like our influenza of the 1914s, I believe it was, that swept across the globe. Something of that effect kind of happened in the United States, North and South America, and literally took out a large portion of the Native American tribes that were here prior to Columbus. All these can be argued, and they can be argued with facts, evidence, and examples. But there's more to a holiday than the history in that sense. Right? The most evidence in which holidays are celebrated is by taking a day off from work or school. Our system of holidays, which developed gradually over time and continues to evolve, is founded upon recognitions that weekends are not sufficient, that some jobs don't offer much time off, and that children and teachers need a break now and then in the course of the school year. One characteristic of holidays is that unless they are observed widely, which is said by almost everyone, many of us wouldn't take them off. There are so many incremental reasons for not taking time off: to make some extra money, to impress the boss, or because we're our own bosses and can't stop ourselves. That a lot of us would willingly do without a day's vacation that would have been good for both us and for society at large if we had taken it off. That's sort of the foundation for a legal holiday. But which days should be holidays? Another way of posing the question would be to say, given that holidays are necessary, but that are left to our own devices where people simply work, how do you justify a legal holiday so that it does not appear completely arbitrary and so that people will be encouraged to observe it? Do we need holidays, people? Do you need Columbus Day off? Anybody? Would you like Columbus Day off? I would like Columbus Day off. Sabrina, how's the day off? How's your day off? What are you doing? Well, nothing. Eating candy. Wouldn't we all like to be sitting around eating candy? No, I wouldn't. What other holiday does the school observe, or I'm sorry, that society in general observes that we don't take off?
MLK.
Well, what's that? Explain.
Martin Luther King.
Martin Luther King Day. What else?
Rosh Hashanah.
Rosh Hashanah? Any other days?
9/11.
All right, now religious holidays we can argue are more of a standard. We can take that Christmas and New Year's more of a seasonal. celebrated across society and across the globe. When we look at national holidays, it's important to understand that, especially in the case of Columbus Day, we're celebrating, I know it sounds bad if you look at the stuff in the last 10 years, but you're celebrating two major groups. Can somebody tell me who they are, please? Two major groups. Okay. Italians. And what would the other group be? Native Americans. Okay. Oh, but Captain Birtch and Columbus and his exploration and conquistadors had the downfall of Native Americans. The idea of Columbus Day being a national holiday was proposed by Benjamin Harrison, who was the president, in 1892, 400 years after the initial voyage. During that time in the culture, you had, of course, the Battle of Wounded Knee. Are we familiar with this? A bunch of soldiers showed up for the most part and said, hey, you need to turn your weapons over. And as the story kind of goes, depending on how you look at it, but let's just take the basic premise of somebody who couldn't hear so well, was kind of old, did not understand the idea that he was giving his rifle in, so he got shot. Next thing you know, there's a massacre. To the effect of that it turned into, besides a massacre, a battle. The soldiers got medals, and the Native American tribes were looking for those medals to be rescinded today. Shortly thereafter, there was an incident down in Louisiana, I believe, with a bunch of Italian descendants who were put on trial for some crimes that they did not commit. And in the course of action, the legal legislature decided to have something happen at the prison in which 11 of them were killed, I believe. All right, that was fear of so-called mafia at the time, which would have been a newly introduced word at that time. So you had these two major things going on. You had strife across the country, and Mr. Harrison decided that it would be a nice spot to have a public holiday put in there. Something that didn't have to do with the founders of the United States and the Civil War. That had to do with the cultures and stuff that came after. Right? The dominant society of the time would have been European. When they came over and took over the Native American land, it dwindled down. All right? And a lot happens there. And there are a lot of people who are upset over Columbus Day, because they just point to the bad things. And you can sit here too, and you can say, and we've heard it, why do we celebrate that day? That's not fair to everybody else. All right, you have St. Patrick's Day. Everybody likes to celebrate that. Is it fair to everybody else? Why don't I have my own holiday? So forth and so on. In the case of Columbus Day, gentlemen, it is a holiday not to prop up the conquistador on a pedestal and talk about how he conquered a peoples and how he brought disease and death, slavery, greed, and things to a new world. They were here before, okay? Columbus Day is there as a national holiday so you can remember that when Christopher Columbus came here, it was a new start. It was a start to bring people from another part of the globe at a new time in history to a new place. And although it was more towards the Caribbean and South America, following him was a great revolution in the form of a society, in a form of accepting other people, of other cultures, religions, freedoms, democracies, all based on a voyage that started in 1492. Okay? Other people knew the world was round. You can argue the Chinese discovered the Americas long before Leif Erikson's father discovered Greenland and Iceland, and Leif Erikson himself discovering America. But the idea that what came after Christopher Columbus, no matter what the motives were, led into a democracy and the freedoms that the Western Hemisphere, for the most part, have today. Okay? Now, if you want to talk about this on a one-on-one basis and have a justified argument with facts, examples, Okay? Come by me, I'll be more than happy to. Are there any questions?
No, sir.
Okay, and on point, going back to sports, at all the soccer that I've been coaching this year, the junior high is the fun one to watch. I'd like to point out Mally and Chris at this point, that on 2 occasions, the coach from the other team has walked over to me and told me flat out, those kids are doing great, they are fun to watch, your team is excellent, I hope you have a great season. No other coach has ever said anything bad, or I'm sorry, no coach has ever said anything bad about the junior high team. It's always impressive, and I urge you, when they do have a home game, guys, come and watch them. They are fun to watch. Thank you.